very modest, so he doesn't like that.
Let me just say, I always had a mission that I wanted to accomplish. And you've heard later now talk about the power of the tracts. Tracts had complete control of the administration of the legislature. And I ran with the idea that that was wrong. And I said that I would remove anybody that had connections with the tract. I fired every one of them. Of course, I have replacements for them. In fact, it's a book that was written by an attorney from Portsmouth, and he documented all of it.
Did you ever read the American Winston Churchill's Coniston and Mr. Crew's career? I've got copies of them if you want to borrow them. It's fiction.
They're great reads.
They're great reads, and it's written about American Winston Churchill served in the Hampshire House from Cornish up that way. Yeah, and that's a similar fight to what Stewart's talking about with the racetrack. That's the fight over the railroads controlling, because their buddies would get free passes into Congress. And it's quite a story in New Hampshire history about that. But this is fiction, but it's very realistic, I think, and very funny in parts. You've read Stewart.
Yes. Not for 100 years, but...
Huh?
So it says here that you were elected in '64, the LBJ landslide, to the Senate. That was your first time in the Senate.
Yes.
And then you were elected in '66.
Yeah.
Is that when you became Senate President?
I was elected 3 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
64, 66, and 68.
Yeah.
And then
He resigned because he took the job.
then resigned, and Lester E. Mitchell elected.
I resigned to take the New England Regional Commission, which served governors of New England. And I had veto power over the governors.
Well, yeah, no, that was the big thing. These regional commissions, there were several of them around the country, and there was a new way to work together with the federal government and the states.
Regionalism.
Regionalism, yeah. And of course there was one for all New England states. Stewart was the guy for all the New England states. And then they would elect the state co-chairman, right, Stewart?
Yep.
Did you put him on? Was it your appointment?
No, it was president's.
Okay.
Of course, I didn't want to lose him, but I was governor then.
Yes, and when I went in to see Walter, he told me what a great opportunity it was. If he had just said, Lamprey, I need you, I would have never gone.
It was a great opportunity. I owe Stewart a lot, for God's sake. He chose me as floor leader, helped me.
I know, your intentions were great. It was a lousy job, though.
The school foundation aide.
Yeah, school foundation.
You're credited with being the one that
I started that, right. Yes, but I won't say that it was my idea or anything else. It came from a study of regionalism in the school, particularly the high school. That was only one thing. I brought the condominium law into New Hampshire. It wasn't used for 15 years. Was the pension system was all shot to hell back then. And so we melded all the pension systems together into one system. And that's what you have.
Was that when you were in the Senate these last years?
That was in the House.
Or in the House?
Yeah, it was in the House.
I think it's when you were president of the Senate, wasn't it? That reorganized the state university system,
Yes.
Created the system of the state colleges instead of normal schools and the rest.
After you were elected Speaker the first time, and you were getting near the end of your term, and knowing that no one else in 100 years had served more than one term, did you have discussions about that with your floor leaders about whether it was a good idea to run or not a good idea, or no?
I just felt I had great rapport with both parties. Okay. Yeah, I used to say the minority leader was my best friend. You know?
That's right.
And we were able to do things. But today, for God's sakes, it's warfare.
How many caucuses, party caucuses, did you have when you were Speaker?
You know, Lou D'Alessandro asked me that very question 6 months ago. And I said, caucuses? What the hell do you have caucuses for? You waste hours and hours and hours in those caucuses. I said, I was God. What I said went. And you have to be very careful how you use the power. But the power is all there. You know, both in the House and the Senate. No, I don't know how it is today. But then, you know, as long as you kept your nose clean. And another thing I learned quickly, that politicians get problems with money, mostly, you know, and they start playing games and all that sort of thing. And I had a guy, Emil Susi from Manchester. He hated my guts because I was not anti-track man. So he looked over every manifesto I ever sent and with my signature on it. And I wasn't going to do anything that couldn't, you know, be a Emil Susi test. and so, you know, and I learned there that your worst enemy can be your best friend.
Now, did you have a Office of Legislative Services that would draft bills for people?
No, I brought that into being.
When you first were in the legislature, that didn't exist?
No, Marian Alexander wrote all the bills. She was in the Attorney General's office. At that time, lawyers wrote a lot of the bills that they were interested in. And they came up, they were put in the hopper, and then we had the hearings, and most of the time they would change.
1960.
Second term. 6 days after the session ended, I had a stroke. And I was 9 months getting over it. I was 39 years old at the time. And that summer, we were out 1st of July or something like that.
Okay, yeah.
And it was on the 6th of July that year that I had the stroke. But the thing that really amazed me, there wasn't an alligator out there that said they'd run against me for a third term. Nobody came forth to say, Lamprey's sick. And that was an amazing, because there's a lot of people who would like to be Speaker.
Now, do you remember the Lafayette elm? The elm tree that was planted when Lafayette came to New Hampshire and addressed the legislature in 1825. They planted this elm tree on the spot where he had lunch. Because they sat on the grass. And that tree lived, and if you saw the whole interview, Lane talks about it. It died of the Dutch elm disease in 55. And Lane had to have it taken down. And he used the wood to make a number of gavels.
I have one.
You have one of those?
I have one of those gavels. Don't lose it.
Don't lose it. Because the only other person I know that has one is Doug Scammon, and he got it from his father.
Sure. I follow Doug Scammon.
Another thing happened in 1955. They decided to change the seats in Representative Hall.
Yes.
Did you take your seat home?
No, I did not. No, I did not.
But you could have, right? At the end, people were there on the floor.
I could have, and it was stupid not to, but I didn't. And I got to tell you, that looked like the Russians had been through a German beer hall. It was fantastic to see that sight when the legislators were all tearing up the seats. And Geisel
Well, he was, yeah.
There was no money appropriated for the seats. And at that time it required Lynn Hill, I believe, was the comptroller of the state.
Yes.
And he wouldn't authorize that. And there's some history about Lynn Hill and myself there, but and that might have been one reason because, well, there was a problem. And so Joe Geisel put up the $75,000 until the legislature, who paid him back for the seats. That's the seats that's there now.
No, what I understood was that he said, because the legislature for years, one year the governor wouldn't, one year it was the Senate,
Yeah.
They were trying to get him for a number of years.
Yeah.
And those seats were about 50 years old because they had put new seats in, I think 1900 was when they put those seats in. Because the seats now are about the same age as the seats when they were taken out. But that Geisel said, I'll pay for these things. No strings attached.
Right.
However, when you come back after the next election, if you like them and you're willing to reimburse me, I'll accept it.
Yeah,
but
I think there was a little more to it than that. I think he expected to get reimbursed for it.
Yeah.
okay.
And after all, it was the honorable thing to do.
Sure.
And there's no 13.
No 13, right?
That was his wish.
Yeah.
That there be no
I
seat.
don't think there is today.
So section 1, it goes from 1-12 to 1-14. There's no, and section 2 the same, and 3 and 4 and 5.
Right. Yeah.
But you remember that scene?
Oh, I remember.
And they were with, people brought their own screwdrivers in,
yeah.
Toolboxes, and
Sure, yeah. And crowbars. That was a record.
did anybody get a picture? Did you have any pictures of?
I don't have any pictures of that, but I think there was some pictures taken at the time.
And do you remember the difference between the old seats and the new seats? With the new ones?
Oh, sure, of course.
Where was your office as speaker?
That's a very good story. That's a very good story. When I came in, we were elected the night before that he was as speaker. There was none of this interim time like this.
In January?
Yeah, which is much better now than it
Much
was.
better now.
And so I came in the next day to go to work as speaker, and the fellow that had charge of the room assignments went to school with my brother Bob. And I knew him, he knew me. And he worked for the
And he was in charge of rooms in the State House? Right. But it wasn't a legislator. It was someone else.
Oh, yes, it was somebody. Oh, yes. And he had just gotten the bank commissioner, who was up in the third floor on that corner.
Right where the Senate President is now. Right where the House Gallery is.
Yes, but that was not the Senate President's office. I had the adjoining rooms to the south. But when I got there the first morning, and I said, "Where's my office?" He says, "You can sit in with your clerk for a few days till we get an office for you." I laughed. I said, "No, I don't think that's going to work." I said, "Join. What's that office over there?" He says, "It's a bank commissioner." Well, and he says, "You can't have that office." He says, "We just got this new bank commissioner from Massachusetts, and we can't move him out right now." I said, "Look, tomorrow morning, that's my office. And if you don't have him out by 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, I'm going to put a resolution in the House, and I'm going to clear this whole floor. And they're going to be the legislative suites for the legislature, because we didn't have many hearing rooms. We only had 3 or 4 hearing rooms for how many committees? Oh, God, there must have been 15 committees.
Oh, yeah.
And
So
So anyway, he was out the next morning and my stuff was moved in. I was there all the time as speaker in the former bank commissioner's office. And then I moved, when I moved into the presidency's office, I took that suite that the Senate President now has. Well, Sylvia Larson is at the president.
Did you have any ambassadors come that you let speak on?
I had some Canadian ambassadors that came.
You didn't have any presidents, though, that came in?
No.
The presidential primary, custom has been that they let the candidates address the legislature, but you didn't do that.
I didn't let anybody speak that had an extra grind. I didn't do it for congressmen. The congressman would like to have come. I didn't let any of those guys do it. You do it for one, you can do it for everybody.
Yeah.
And it gets old hat. Do they do it now?
Not too much, no. Ford came, President Ford came in the spring one year and addressed the legislature.
The only contentious session that I had, we had 3 trials. The first day. And the 2 Democrats were removed, and the Republican...
that was the year that Bob Preston was...
Yes, Bob Preston was removed.
Removed?
Yeah.
Over his residency?
Yes, over his residency.
Whether he lived here 7 years.
Exactly, yeah.
That must have made that session a little unusual.
Yeah. But Eileen Foley got to me, God, I can see her now. She says, I'm going to make your life as miserable as I can. And I said, we'll see whose life is miserable. And of course, she was a great one to have these resolutions, for basketball or baseball and all that sort of thing. And so I formed a resolutions committee. So every resolution that came, what's the resolution? If it came from Eileen Foley, and that was all like a day. Until the last day of the session, she says, Stewart, I've got a basketball team. I said, okay. We'll get the resolution through. I'll talk to the committee. We didn't talk to the committee, but we got the...
You didn't have a resolutions committee before that?
No sense. But everybody knew it was punishment, and everybody knew what was said. What I said, I never made any bones about it. Yeah, but nobody wanted to get on that list.
You created legislative services.
Yeah.
LBA.
The budget office was there and functioning and counting the beans very well when I was there. The audits were invaluable. This was set up, this was an administrative thing. It was out of my control.
Oh.
Yes, out of my control completely. And as it should be. And they are independent.
Now they are.
Yes, they are. And they were then. Yeah. But I did get the audits 3 days before anybody else got them. Well, the President of the Senate, the Governor, and myself got them 3 days before. So we knew what was in the audits.
Who picked the staff? And who picked the chief, the person who headed it up?
All the time that I was there, it was a very excellent man from Hampton. And I think that had been set up about 20 years before I was Speaker.
Really?
Yeah, it's been there a long time. Yeah. And their audits were good. I'm proud of 2 things. One was I got the money for the Norris Cotton Cancer Center. I was federal co-chairman at the time. I didn't have enough to do, so I...
The Norris Cotton Cancer Center.
Yeah.
I went up to see Norris Cotton not too long before he died. And I asked him, of all the things that he did, what was the one he looks back the most fondly on that he He told me it was that.
Yeah.
Now, he must have had some role in that.
Of course he did. He got the money. Let me tell you how it happened. I knew that they needed $2 million to install a Betatron. That's a German X-ray machine that goes around the cancer and doesn't burn all the flesh and so forth. And so I went to Norris Cotton and I said, Norris, you know, if you could get an earmark in here for a couple of $1 million, get the cancer center, we'll name it after you. And he said, I'll see what I can do. And we were friendly. We had a war when Goldwater was running.
Yeah, I gotta say, I remember that.
And came back and said, I don't know, I can't seem to get the chairman because the Democrats were in power then.
Magnuson.
Yeah. That's not enough to put in for an earmark. He says, you're entitled to more than that. Mr. Cotton. So we run it up to $8 million.
Wow.
Well, how'd we do it? We got the American Cancer Society involved in it. We got the VA involved in it. And we got the Cancer Alliance. And there was a half a dozen different identities in it that got a piece of the action. And when we got to $8 million, Magnuson said, that's worthy of putting it in, Norris. So
that's what he told me. That was the most,
yeah.
That was the best, his best accomplishment.
Yes.
That was what he remembers more than anything else.
Right.
Norris told me that.
Yeah.
He said he made a lot of mistakes. I mean, he said a lot of things I supported, I wish now I hadn't, and but that's everybody that has a long political.
And you know, he left all his worldly goods to the cancer center when he died.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he left everything. He had no relatives.
What year was that? Do you remember when you got that money?
69.
You were in the Senate then?
No, I was federal co-chairman of the New England Regional Commission.
Oh, you weren't even in the legislature.
And I had to cross the agency because I couldn't mix into health welfare.
Okay.
Monies. And they were against it. And the woman in Boston said to me, she says, it's going to be over my dead body before you get that. And I said, prepare a coffin. So,
and you were the first one to say it should be named after Norris Cotton.
yes, absolutely. No question. Yeah. And, hey, it made a lot of sense.
Oh.
And the other one was my work around the environment. I received the Wildlife Foundation's National Award for my work on the environment. Guess what it was? It was septic tanks. We were way up front, the rest of the country, in septic tanks because it was polluting some of the waters in the state. And today, I'm interested in milfoil. I'm working like hell, spend a lot of time.
If you served 3 terms as Speaker and 2 terms as Senate President.
I've really served 3 because, don't forget that was biannual session.
There has never been a person since the state went to 2-year terms who has served in those constitutional offices as long as you.
That is correct.
That's right. Yeah, that would be.
That's right. 11 years. If Walter was Speaker of the House and I was President of the Senate, we were friends.
Oh, yeah.
There wasn't much that got by.
Yeah. You were Speaker while you were Senate President.
That's right.
And then you were Senate President when Walter was governor.
Yeah. I was close to Nixon. I was amazed when he got into this trouble. I was amazed. Because Nixon was a very laid-back guy. You didn't discuss football with him. You didn't discuss. know, his wife's dress or something. I never ate a meal with him. Although I'd be in the next room, he always had the meal set up before he went to a banquet.
Really?
Oh yeah. He was different. He was different. But you know how people come up and talk to presidential candidates and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Jim Adams taught me one of the most rememberable political activities that I've never forgotten. And that was that I was pushing a bill. And I went to Sherman. I wanted his help. And he was governor at the time. And I foolishly said to him, "No, I couldn't support your sales tax bill, but there are many other things that I can support that you." He looked at me right through you, you know. And he said, you didn't support it. I didn't know that. He said, you didn't help me, I'm not going to help you. And that taught me to know that not everybody knows something that you should be telling them. Because,
That's right.
you know, you may be telling them the wrong damn thing.
He told a story about he told his wife not to take the car, son, he wouldn't take the car. She went and took the car and drove it right through the garage door. Well, yeah.
On where the hospital, the Concord Hospital now sits. And
I thought his house was where the Unitarian Church is now.
But we had a hearing on it, and I got 20 votes in committee. So it came to the floor of the House. Somebody asked for a division vote on it. I had 20 members of the committee that voted for it. When the vote came, there was only 16 of us that stood up. 16. And the rest of the House rolled. And I said, how the hell does this work? I got 20 votes in committee, and I could only get 16 votes in the House.
So that was, but they offered it to be bought to be a governor.
No, they didn't. I turned it down, but I gotta get out of here.
Yeah, we gotta get moving. Can we come back again someday, Bill? 100 more stories, I can tell you.
Yeah, I mean, if they're willing, there's a book coming out later this fall about the 3 most important Americans in London during World War II. And the 3 of them are Winant, Edward R. Morrow, and Averell Harriman. And what the information in there about Winant is unbelievable, what he was like and how much he was on the front page of the British papers and and I don't think people in New Hampshire had any idea what was happening. I mean, the war was hard enough on everyone.
So we're still talking about Winant when I was around.
In a positive way.
Yeah,
right?
oh, no, yeah.
Well, let's do it again.
Okay, okay.
Well, let's set a date out. I'm sorry to keep you standing.
What a crew.
there when he was Speaker.
Yeah.
Do you remember him coming to you, campaigning for Speaker?
Yes, I do. Yeah, very vividly. The first time I ever met him.
Because he mentioned he had gone to see 260 out of the 265 Republicans.
Right, and we did talk about committees a little, and he was absolutely right. He would give me no indication of what I wanted. Executive departments at that time. Yeah. I got Labor. I was damn glad I voted for Turner. Because I asked him 3 questions, as I remember, and one of them was on gambling, I'm sure, I'm positive. And he spoke all the way around it, and I couldn't get any sense as to where the hell he was going to come down on gambling.
He ended up vetoing.
Yes, he did. He vetoed the lottery.
That was the only veto that he made when he was governor for 4 years.
Really?
He made one veto.
And I had gone in to see him and asked him to veto it, along with lots of others, of course, but I was not in favor of the lottery.
I didn't know much about the legislature, except what Cotton told me, because I was out traveling all over the place working for him. And doing I was chairman of the Hillsborough County Republicans for 10 years. So I knew Hillsborough County and all that kind of stuff.
Was there anything that you saw from the rest of that first tape from Lane that you'd want to talk about, or anything that hit you in a way that was new to you, or brought back some memories that...
Well, I think the most interesting thing that brought back in the way of memories was that how they handled the gambling interest at that time, because it was a real influence over state operations and government. And I was out to bust that up if I could, and did. And I'm proud of that as an accomplishment.
A lot of the things were easier for me because he blazed the trail beforehand and fought those battles. When I came in, just so that it ties up, because I was a Porter store, and we're just one of many. But we knew one another, and he appointed me as the vice chairman of ED&A because Governor Powell was governor, right?
Yes.
And he had all these reorganization bills, which are very controversial.
Bob Hill, your chairman?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And he'd been ambassador, I think, to 5 countries and all that sort of thing. So Walter actually
ran
the committee.
It was lucky break for me.
He's from Hanover, right?
No, a Littleton.
Did he just serve one term then? And then did Walter move up to chair of that committee?
Oh, yeah.
What happened was I had to actually hold all the big hearings. And he wasn't around. First time I found out how it was going to be, they had a caucus, and party caucus. Powell came in to talk to us about the reorganization bill, and he called on the chairman to stand. Hill said, we held several hearings and so forth about all this, he said, and my vice chairman, Mr. Peterson, would tell you all about it. So I got up and fancy danned around it, and supported the governor and everything else. But
did you have legislative services?
No, I brought legislative services in. Yeah. That was one of the...
Who would you say is someone who never got to be speaker or never, but if you were to pick a legislator during your time who was an outstanding legislator, but not someone who the state would really know, who didn't have a lot of name, but was a really good one, was an effective one, was a good speaker, was someone who was influential, but never moved up the ladder. Is there anyone that jumps out?
You're asking me, I think, to name somebody who might be a mentor, and I can't do that. I can't pick one person, but I would pick one person that had more influence than for good, that wasn't in the legislature, and that would be Marian Alexander.
Now, she was the one that drafted the legislation if she agreed with it.
Drafted the legislation. At the same time, she took care of all the corporations that was coming in. And she did a great job. She had a knack for writing legislation that you would never believe. She could take the most complicated things. And my test used to be, for legislation, that can a high school graduate read this and understand it?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I think we had better legislation because I used to toss them back. You know,
Yeah.
What the hell is this? I can't understand it.
Oh, yeah.
Go back and do it over till I can understand it.
You would tell legislators that.
Well, I tell whoever brought the legislation in.
Well, wouldn't
See,
they write
most of our legislation that came in was from lawyers that had a special interest.
Sure.
That's interesting. Okay.
Okay?
So it wasn't that the legislators themselves wrote the bills before legislative services.
Yes.
They had the lobbyists and the lawyers. And
Well, the lawyers, right. They were not really, in most instances, lobbyists.
Well, what would legislators do? Pay a lawyer to write the...
If they represented somebody or they had a problem, in some cases, like Dick Cooper, you know, who
Rochester.
would do a great job of writing somebody's piece for them, a legislator's piece.
So
What they knew, and Marian Alexander did the rest.
But she did the judiciary related.
She
right?
did it. She did it all.
But she only did it if she agreed with it too, right?
No, I didn't write that particularly. No, I don't think so.
So if you're a new legislator and you have an idea that you wanted to increase the speed limits, or you wanted to put a new drunken driver law in,
Right.
and there was no legislative services to go to.
Yeah.
How did it happen? Did these law firms that were pushing certain, would they get a hold of, say, we'll write it for you, or how did it happen?
In fairness, probably the first term that I was there, I'd say go see Marian Alexander. Okay.
Sure.
But then, in the second term, I would hire individual lawyers who I thought wrote good legislation, and I would bring them in for a period of a month, 2 months, whatever. Some of the guys would give, 2 weeks to write legislation, and they were very generous about it. We paid them, of course, but that's how we got through.
Think of your freshman year, your very first winter in the legislature.
Yeah.
Did you put any bills in?
I only put one bill in which the legislature defeated. It was about Helgramites.
Helgramites?
Helgramites.
We used to go to New Boston, this brook in New Boston, to get Helgramites before we went up to Winnipesaukee for the summer for the
That's right.
fish, because they were the
That's
bass
right.
loved Helgramites.
And
But nobody knows what a Helgramite is now. A lot of people don't know.
My bill was to try to save the beds of Helgramites.
My goodness.
And
My goodness.
and by gosh, the legislature turned it down.
So went to Fish and Game, that committee.
Yeah. Yes, it went to Fish and Game.
Now, I'll bet half the legislators, I'll bet 2/3 of them don't know what a Helgramite is.
I would agree with that.
Stuart's close to the people, he understands.
But they love to turn me down. So do you think I would introduce another bill?
That's a great experience.
That was a great experience.
That's a great experience. When you became speaker, you had a Republican governor. Then your second term as speaker, you had a Republican. Then you had a Democrat, your last 2 years as speaker. Was it a big change in in the legislature, did the Democrats have, I mean, was it different or noticeably different? Or
as far as my relationship
yeah.
with the legislature and the governor,
Yes.
there was no change as far as the legislature was concerned. The Republicans had a solid majority, and things were normal there. Now, as far as the governorship is concerned, I had a great relationship while John King was a member of the House. Very helpful in many ways. And
He was the minority leader? Was he the minority leader
Yes,
when
he
you
was.
were speaker?
Yes, also, last term.
Yeah, the last term.
Yeah.
When I was.
Yeah. And he became the governor. And we got along fine for a while. And the question of the lottery came up again. And it long story, but it passed the House and it passed the Senate. And it went to the governor for signature.
Now, were you against that?
I was opposed to the law.
You were opposed?
Yes.
But you couldn't hold the Republicans?
I didn't try because the president of the Senate, Phil Dunlap, said that he had a high majority of members of the Senate were against the lottery. But when the votes came, he was in the minority. And so it went through. There was no committee of conference.
Oh, wow. Now, you know what's very interesting? Lane, in his interview, was one of the parts we didn't see. When he was asked about his vetoes, you know, the only veto he made was on the lottery.
Yeah. But
I asked him, as governor, you couldn't prevent it from getting to you? What about the Senate? And he said, the Senate was supposed to kill it. They said that it was going to die. And he said, and it didn't. And that's why I had to, he said, so it's the same kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, there's a sideline to that whole thing. It actually was a fairly close vote there in the big debate.
And I always blame myself a little bit for not being a little more active because we could have killed him.
Oh yeah, I think so.
But that's history.
Well, why did you not? Why did you take the position as Speaker? Now, here you were, this is your third term, you know that House better than anyone.
Yeah.
You've been in that position, you're against it.
Yeah.
Why did you just let it happen?
I had a lot more on the fire than that.
Oh, okay.
Several issues that
Oh,
A good leader picks his fights. Larry Pickett was the guy that carried the ball. And he would win 2-1 in the House. Why make the big fight? Because it was a big margin to overcome. You gotta go back and look at those votes.
Yeah, I know that.
You assumed the Senate was going to take care of it anyway.
I believe Phil Dunlap.
We didn't have it wasn't a party position.
No. And so the bill went to the governor for signature.
And he was supporting it, right?
Well, wait a minute. No. He took no position.
Oh.
He played the game every day until he had to make a decision to sign the bill or veto the bill.
Oh, he had not supported it.
And I had been in to see him
That's
3 or 4 times. You know, John, what are you gonna do? You know, I would like to know. And each time he indicated. Now, he never said that I'm going to sign the bill, but he indicated to me he was going to veto the bill. So when it came time for him to sign the bill, he decided that he wanted to make a speech before the House of Representatives. Now, he's got to have the permission of the speaker to make that speech. And I said, sure, of course, because I knew how he was going to vote.
Oh, my goodness.
So, of course, when he said, I'm going to sign Bill, I could have taken the gavel, you know, hit him in the knees. But anyway, that was the end of the romance. That was the end of the romance. Because you know, rightly and wrongly, I never trusted it again.
Yeah.
He was just...
But he never, you said he indicated to you. By what means did he indicate if he never said, I will let...
There's a lot of ways to indicate.
Do you remember specifically how he indicated?
No, but he knew the pros and he knew the cons.
Yeah.
And he would play one against the others in his conversation, leaning toward the fact that he would veto the bill. Never said it. Give him credit.
As Senate, you served 2 terms as Senate President while Walter was Speaker. You were a freshman in the legislature.
Yeah.
And that's when you were made Vice Chair at Hill, but basically Chair.
Yeah.
Then your second term in the legislature, you became Majority Leader.
Yeah, well, he pointed...
During your final term as Speaker. And then you became Speaker. So you went through the chairs, Vice Chair, Majority Leader, Speaker.
Yeah.
Now, when you went to the Senate, that very first, did you have... There's not too many people that have gone from Speaker to Senate President in the next election. Lane mentions that. And he said the reason was because Speaker of the House, senators respected that position. And did you have opposition when you ran for Senate President?
I did have, I didn't have Republican.
No Republican?
No, I had them all lined up before I made the move. Of course, I had Democrat opposition because we didn't have caucuses as you have caucuses today.
All right. Now, when Walter was your Majority Leader, did you have a whip? Or did you have any assistant? You didn't have any.
No.
You had one position, Majority Leader. How about you, Walter? Did you have any whips?
No, I didn't believe in that. What I bought into was Stewart's philosophy that you get the best loyal, tough, capable committee chairperson, vice chairman. See, that becomes your organization. They're the people you are going to have to depend on, and they in effect become another group of support. So I picked people who were effective because I came to the legislature with a lot of experience in politics, wide traveling all over the state, knowing who was the chairman and all the people. And yet, really, all I knew about the legislature was what Norris Cotton would tell me, plus that Stewart was active. You know, that I knew Stewart in politics and in the real estate, in the real estate organization. We both were state presidents of the realtors, several terms apart. I mean, you know, so that's how we got to know the combination of plot business and all. Can I just tell one quick story? When I was working for Norris Cotton, I said, geez, I like this kind of like this work in politics and this sort of thing. What would be your advice on how somebody should get more into it? And he gave me some damn good advice. The first point particularly, he said, well, the first thing is make a good success of what your profession or business is in life. Don't be dependent. Don't be dependent, you know. And my business was the same as Stewart's, and I was doing well in the business. And he said, that's the person. So you won't be tempted to do the wrong thing just because you feel if you don't do it, you're not going to be here anymore. And the other thing he said was, there's this great institution in New Hampshire called the New Hampshire House of Representatives with 400 members. He said, you pick your spot, find a chance to run, you think you can win. And he said, you get elected, you'll go up there, you'll be kind of taking the measure of everybody else, and they'll be taking yours. But Stewart, of course, I had a lot of confidence in, and it wasn't just, not based on the legislature, but based on working together in campaigns and all that kind of stuff. We have a history together.
And I chose, to some degree, people for the committee chairmanships that were totally loyal. I didn't try to say, well, he's the best guy that there ever lived for this spot. But loyalty, then knowledge.
Did you have many women?
No, not many. I would say we had between 20 and 30. I think it's closer to 50.
Any chairman,
50.
any committee chairs?
Oh, yes. Yeah. I can't remember what that
Right,
was.
because you had a few, and you had a few.
Yeah, by my time, there were more.
More will come.
And a better choice, you think, you know.
And we rarely had to talk to people about supporting the party, that this is a party deal. I would say it didn't come up more than 3, maybe 4 times during the entire session when something would be.
I got a phone call from it was Chet Wiggin. He said, the boss wants to talk. And he says, your friend Lamprey. He says, your friend Lamprey. He says, he's the guy who's got to do this. And if you don't get him to do it, you'll be doing it. You'll be the guy.
That's how I got drafted. I want you to know. Fought like hell. He wanted to run the campaign. And I didn't want him to run the campaign. And so we had to have a showdown. One day we met up to Hanover and had dinner. And I said, I understand that you have made an arrangement to have Barry Goldwater to go to a certain place in Exeter. And I've got to schedule someplace else. And we have to decide who's going to run this campaign. You know? It's either you run that campaign, or I run that campaign, or I resign. He said, Barry Goldwater won't run unless you're running the campaign. And I said, well, it's got to be that way. We can't have 2 bosses up here. No, he said, I'm a United States Senator, and I can't schedule something over to Exeter, New Hampshire. And I said, that's right. So we parted. And I spent 21 days with Senator Goldwater, and many of those days Cotton would be with him. And I'm going to tell you, they were quite a pair. And but Cotton and I became fast friends.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
You know,
This was just, I don't know what the hell.
This was business.
Was there ever a point in your time where you were like Phil Dunlap, that you said the votes would come in and they didn't? Did that ever happen to you?
I don't think so. I don't think so, to be honest.
So that's kind of your trademark. And just the last thing. In the positions that you were both in, what quality, well, what do you think is the most endearing quality that a person in those positions needs to have?
Trust.
That your word is your bond.
Yeah, trust. If you can't build trust, stay out of the game.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. This is December 8th, 2009, and we finished watching a film of Wayne Grinnell talking about his years. And thank you, Stewart.
Thank you.
Thank you, Walter.
The governor, my first governor, Wesley Powell. Did you ever see that film?
Oh, no.
Will you?
You want me to call you after I see it? Is there something in there that...
No, you know, I wanted used in
Okay.
it.
Okay.
And you'll find it very interesting.